So many people have heard about the global dominating company that is Monsanto. However, not a lot of people really know what Monsanto is, what the origins were, or what it's become, and it's nothing like you'd expect. And I don't even know really, because uncovering this thing is a giant mystery wrapped in an enigma, wrapped in a riddle. Like, it's really, really confusing. Thought we'd make a video about it. Let's talk. Okay, so a basic general history lesson of the company Monsanto is it was founded in 1901 by a guy named John F. Queeny, and this guy was married to a woman named Olga Monsanto Queeny, and that's where it got the name Monsanto, and it was to produce altered products for food, for agriculture. And their first product to be rolled out under the company name Monsanto was, of course, saccharin, one of the worst things we're still dealing with now. People don't understand that modified sugar, like a fake sugar, is worse than real sugar, but real sugar is bad enough. Like, that's where all of this inversion came to be. Like, telling people what they can eat other than what is from nature is okay. That's where we completely got off track, and that's where this company starts its lesson. But rather than go down the road of listing off every little thing they did in the company, because you can just Google Monsanto for that, I wanted to talk more about how recently it's been in the news that Monsanto was just bought by Bayer, a German global giant of a pharmaceutical company. Well, obviously that got people concerned because people were like, well, why would a pharmaceutical company buy Monsanto, an agricultural company, when they're not really, right? Okay, so what basically happened is in 2000 or 2001, the company Monsanto actually was bought by another company named Pharmacia. And that Pharmacia brand was operating under the Monsanto name for quite a while. Then in 2003, Pharmacia was bought out by Pfizer. And a lot of people don't know this, but anything you know about the bad things Monsanto's doing is probably under Pfizer. But it gets really convoluted and complex to follow, so that's where I'm kind of like, do I make this video right now or not? Because when you're looking up this trail of who was bought and sold when and who operates doing what, because the major play happened, and that's when Monsanto split and kind of sold a little bit each way. It sounds like Monsanto became a hua. But basically what happened was the pharmaceutical branch of Monsanto was sold off to Pharmacia, and then so the chemical-based part of the company was sold off to a company called Solutia, which is now wholly owned subsidiary of Eastman Chemical Company. Looking into this stuff, I mean, gives you a headache. But basically what this is saying is Monsanto split into a company that worked on chemicals, which is basically your pesticides, and then a company that worked on pharmaceuticals, which is basically stuff like Clarinex. They got big for that. That's why Pfizer bought them. So when you look at this, the facade of an agricultural company has always been fake. If you look back at the beginning of Monsanto in 1901, it was to create saccharin. That's a fake product. It was a product that we now know 100 years later to cause many, many defects in the human body. And if all you eat are these fake genetically altered organisms, you have to understand, you are what you eat truly does mean something. And when you eat fake processed sugar, wheat, and dairy-filled foods, those are all just rocket fuels for cancers and chronic illness, heart disease. All of this stuff is being caused by the things we ingest every day, along with the chemicals we put on our bodies, the chemicals we put in our water, the chemicals that we're surrounded by in the air, and, you know, like the stuff we're not thinking about, basically. So when you think of Monsanto, just know that Monsanto itself doesn't really exist anymore. All of Monsanto is being run and operated by other companies and other CEOs. It's really confusing, so when you look into this, make sure you're aware of that, because I believe that's how they're getting away with all the shadiness. When my boyfriend mentioned that Monsanto was sold for $88 billion to Bayer, that didn't make sense. They're a globally dominating company who's basically in charge of like 24% of our food supply. It's something ridiculous. Look it up. So I was like, 88 billion, that's like nothing. And then he was like, well, that's just a subsidiary company. So I started looking into this. There's so many different branches of where this company could have went, and it's all handled in really dark corners. It's actually even hard to Google some of this information. But when you do look into like Pharmacia or Pfizer, you start to find out that they are allowing the Monsanto brand to keep its name out in the public so that Pfizer doesn't take on a lot of the blame of what's going on. And then a lot of these companies are interconnected. When I looked this up, I found out that only like 6 companies exist that run like most of the agricultural game in this world. And it was talking about how with like small farmers or small companies in the agricultural business, companies like Pfizer and Monsanto and Pharmacia, or however you pronounce that bullshit name, they basically make it so it's only cheap to use the GMO seeds. They like hike up prices in other parts of the field. This is what I was reading. Please read it as well, because I need somebody to help me clarify the shit out of this topic. But it sounds like they basically squeeze out the competition and make them come into the game that they're playing. And we've all heard the stories about how Monsanto was going after small farmers who were using their seeds, even though basically what would happen is a crop field of Monsanto's next to a family-owned farm. The wind would blow, seeds would, disperse the way seeds do, and because Monsanto products were growing and then taking over these small farms, they then were suing the small farms for profit. And this is what we're allowing to take over the world. Like, this is truly, when you go to the grocery store and you buy processed shitty GMO food, when you go to your Safeway, when you go to your Festival Foods, when you go to your Rainbow, when you go to your Cub Foods, all that bullshit, it's all carrying this poison. It's not only poisoning you, it's poisoning our economy. It's just squeezing out small farmers. Organics are becoming a thing of the past, because I was also reading that a lot of organics are either raised or fielded in similar or close by areas with the GMOs. They're cross-contaminating all the time. But then I was also reading that fresh produce and stuff gets doused in radiation once it needs to cross the state border. So even shipping oranges from California to Minnesota radiated. Like, this is the stuff nobody's talking about because everybody's under the veil of Monsanto's evil. It's not. It actually just started off like a little stupid company that made a nickel off of, cheating people. We have a lot of those companies, do we not? Apple. Anything you list, anything you could possibly list right now, they're cheating you. But with Monsanto, the real evil came about in the mid to late 90s and then around millennium, when the deals were starting and the company was growing exponentially. And it really was, I believe it's the Clarinex, I think that's the allergen drug or something, that really skyrocketed Monsanto. It made Pharmacia pay attention, and then Pfizer came into the game, and they've created some really, really evil drugs since. But I just wanted to make this video so people know Monsanto is not destroying the family farm the way we think. It's actually being done by Big Pharma, Big Agro. Like, a lot of these companies are working together to make it impossible for you, your family, or, people to own, operate, or even buy from local organic farms. They're really trying to snuff that out. And then you have to just ask yourself why. But then if you are on this truthing campaign along with me and you're trying to discover why is the world falling apart, what's happening, Joan? I miss Joan. And if you get that Phoebe reference from Friends, tell me. But you have to start taking this into consideration. I think, from my perspective, a lot of this is happening because of control. And we know that when people in power get control, they can never have enough. We know that about control and about power. So if you think about it, when these companies and these organizations and these CEOs are gaining power and control over pulling these power plays and getting these, conglomerates to merge and billions of dollars are being traded, this is like some insane shit. Don't you think it has to do with wanting control over you? What you eat, when you can eat, and how you're gonna eat. Like, it just, to me, seems like they want control over all of our crops, our seeds. They want to tell us when we can plant. They want to tell us if we're going to be allowed to eat. Like, this is, you have conversations with most people. let me say this, you have conversations like this with most people and they will shut you down. They'll laugh at you and they'll think you're crazy. And that's fine. Let them have that just be your aura for a minute, because the most it's going to do is make them think. Okay? They're going to think. They're going to be like, okay, this person I knew is crazy now. And then they're going to start thinking, and along their daily lives, there's going to be things that what you said resonates, and it's just going to click. But in that moment of trying to convince somebody that a GMO versus an organic is a real debate you should be having with yourself every day, and until you decide organic is the only way to live, because that's what our fucking human ancestors did. Nobody had GMOs. Until we realize that, we can't change our thought process. We can't change the human collective of consciousness, because it's being drowned in poison. And we have to understand that. We have to understand that as a collective, it's more than an important conversation to have. It's vital for our survival that we have this conversation. And people need to wake up to the fact that organic is the only way to live. It is the only way we're going to help Mother Nature get back to an alkalizing state. She's super acidic right now and pissed about it, okay? And that's another thing. If you don't know about that, that's a huge role is played just by knowing alkaline versus acidic. I mean, it's a basic pH scale. You want to be more alkalizing. Humans and Earth are supposed to be alkaline. 7 is the in-between. We're supposed to be like a 7 point something. Okay, so we're supposed to be more alkalizing. We're super acidic, and that's why we have these cancers. That's why we have disease popping out of fucking corners nobody knew, right? You always hear about these trendy diseases like Ebola to Zika to Inferno. Like, what? Who's making up the names, by the way? All of this is a crock of shit. That's another thing I've also told people, look into somebody named Dr. Robert Morse, ND. He's a naturopath. He taught me everything I know about my lifestyle change that really woke me up to what a diet means. And I started to realize that we don't need wheat, we don't need dairy, we don't need sugar, we don't need protein. Okay, like, we need to start figuring out what we need. Okay, so stop being lied to. Stop thinking you have all the answers, cause you don't. Because life is just like this rabbit hole of Monsanto bullshit, and you can't find the right answer because there's so many fucking lies out there, and the truth is buried so far down. You're like, wait, that's impossible. Like, what? It's just, this is what we're dealing with, and just know that. Like, this insanity is what you're fighting through every day. And I wanted to make this Monsanto video. I wish I could have done it better. I know this is not amazing. I just wanted to get this information out there because a lot of people on social media are talking about how Monsanto's evil and how it's this giant company, when really they don't know what they're talking about. It's really Pfizer you want to pay attention to. And Monsanto hasn't really been a thing for a long time. They're just using the name. So be aware, talk to people you know about this issue, and look into it more yourselves. And please feel free to clap back with any information you may know. I would love to learn more about this. And if you're a better sleuth detective than I am, please throw out any factual information you might know that would help us learn more about this shady ass company and where they're going, what they're doing, what they've done, and things we just don't know because nobody talks. But anyway, I wanted to keep this one brief. I have many more quick topics coming out, just random thoughts that I wanted to speak on. I hope you guys are engaged. Clap back. I'll talk to you soon. Take care of yourself. Peace out.